When we close our eyes and drift into sleep, our bodies rest while our minds travel to completely different worlds. Sometimes we speak languages we don't know fluently. Sometimes we fly. And sometimes the darkest scenes appear before us. Hey guys, I'm going to be straight with you. 2 years ago, I had nothing. Today, I'm here with you. How about being part of this journey? Subscribe to Hidden Legends. But what happens in our brain, or more accurately, in our consciousness during sleep that allows us to travel to completely different worlds? If sleep is just for resting, why does our brain create stranger and deeper worlds, conversations, and events than when we're awake? Why do some parts of our brain that process emotions and visual images become more active during REM sleep when we dream than when we're awake? Today we're going to explore together the boundaries of sleep, consciousness, dreams, and even parallel universes. And as the famous psychiatrist Carl Jung said, dreams are small, secret doors that open to the deepest and most intimate refuge of the soul. We'll try to discover the deep mystery behind these words. Welcome to Hidden Legends. Mainstream science has viewed sleep for years as the brain balancing the day's intense electrical stimuli and putting itself into a kind of maintenance mode to prepare for the next day. This isn't really a wrong definition. Our brain really needs sleep. And if you don't sleep, your brain will literally destroy itself due to damage in nerve cells, toxic substances that accumulate in the brain, and hormonal imbalances. That's why sleep is a necessity for almost all living beings. However, while the general definition of sleep is that simple, it's an extremely deep and mysterious journey. Thanks to the latest technological and scientific developments, the science and secrets behind sleep have started to show themselves more clearly to humanity. And they showed us that when we put our head on the pillow, although our body is there, our consciousness begins journeys to completely different worlds. Actually, sometimes these worlds didn't even belong to this universe. While most of us think our consciousness shuts down during sleep, our brain remains active during sleep, especially during the REM phase. When we dream, brain waves show a liveliness similar to wakefulness. Some measurements even show that the brain can be more active during dreaming than when awake. So consciousness doesn't disappear. It starts functioning in a different and extremely creative way. When I say creative, you'll soon understand how deep a meaning that has. When we navigate through the dusty pages of history, mystical and esoteric perspectives suggest that consciousness during sleep doesn't just withdraw inward but also leaves the body. In many cultures, it was believed that the soul separated from the body during sleep and wandered. Sleep was even called semi-death. Researcher and author Robert Monroe, documenting his own out-of-body experiences, claims that consciousness can separate from the body during sleep and wander in other worlds through trance states. He even established a research center on this subject, systematically writing the popular practices known as astral travel. Monroe says, "I am more than my physical body, because I'm not just physical matter. I can perceive things beyond the physical world," drawing attention to the limitlessness of human consciousness and saying that consciousness can make a transition to a different dimension during sleep. Moreover, he even created various ways for you to experience this better with his developed hemisync technique, synchronizing the right and left brain lobe. I'll leave the link in the description. You can experience it yourself. Of course, this claim is a phenomenon not yet proven by mainstream science. But let's not forget that it's also a scientific fact that our consciousness's experiences during sleep haven't been completely deciphered. So we shouldn't be too prejudiced in a field where we've just gone from crawling to walking, right? For years, both physical and psychological factors related to why we dream during sleep have been examined, and dozens of claims have been made. However, thanks to modern science, we have at least a somewhat better understanding of what triggers dreams in our brain. An extraordinary molecule called DMT. DMT, or dimethyltryptamine, a molecule with powerful hallucinogenic effects, is a chemical found in some plants that, when consumed in ritual drinks, causes visions that take people to completely different worlds. Interestingly, DMT is also a molecule produced naturally in the human brain. Experiments conducted at the University of Michigan in 2019 prove that mammalian brains can produce and secrete DMT. The same study has another detail that makes things even more interesting. It was observed that the amount of DMT in the brains of laboratory rats increased suddenly and significantly during moments of clinical death. It's exactly at this point that things really start getting interesting. We know that DMT is secreted during REM sleep, especially by our pineal gland, associated with our third eye, one of the most important symbols of the ancient world, and by different brain regions. And through this, you can travel to completely different worlds, even existences, while sleeping. DMT's role isn't 100% deciphered yet, but as I said before, the experiences of people who consume it from plants during various religious rituals almost always contain similar motifs. Separation from earthly bonds, an explosion of feeling that comes with a great sense of unity and happiness, sometimes described as divine. If we proceed with this approach before diving into extreme scientific and metaphysical aspects, we can ask whether the DMT secreted during sleep, and even at the moment of death, transports our consciousness to another dimension. Let's examine a bit more scientifically, because soon everything will be so intertwined that you'll be amazed. Dreams, especially vivid dreams, sometimes offer sensations and images so realistic they can't be distinguished from real life. But how can a scenario created by our brain convince us as if it were real? Moreover, while all our emotional extension systems remain static in our beds, one reason for this is that during dreams, our brain's visual cortex functions almost as if we were awake. Even with our eyes closed, our brain plays its own movie. This movie creates vivid scenes inspired by our memories, imagination, and unconscious. And this movie is so real to the brain that when we feel the sun in our dream, our brain can react. When we're scared, our heart beats fast. Even when we fall from a high place, we experience that feeling as if it were real. The reason for this, as I mentioned before, is that during dreams, the brain's visual and emotional centers, especially the amygdala, which is the emotional center, are active. On the other hand, the prefrontal cortex, which is the logical control tower, goes offline. As a result, dream stories that seem normal when experienced but are absurd emerge because they can't pass through the logic filter. And this situation also contributes to the reality of dreams. Notice that we rarely say during a dream that this is absurd, impossible. We accept everything as real without questioning. How many of you, while flying in your dreams, said, "What's happening, dude? Why am I flying?" However, except for those with high self-control, in such moments, most of us usually don't even realize we're in a dream, no matter how absurd it is. But there's an important point here. When some experience what they call lucid dreams, and some mystics call astral travel as a more advanced level, during a normal dream, the normally closed logical part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, starts to activate again. That's why don't confuse normal dreams with lucid dreams or astral travel, which is an extension of them. You'll understand why shortly. Now, some might ask this: how can I create places I've never seen in my life, languages I don't know, and even people I don't know very well in my dreams? How can this be possible? It's with these kinds of questions that we take a step deeper into the bottomless darkness of seemingly innocent topics like sleep and dreams. And the two most mysterious elements of our brain and even our existence greet us: subconscious and unconscious. There's almost no one who hasn't heard of the concept of subconscious. It's one of our brain's decision-making and character formation mechanisms, and its mystery hasn't been completely deciphered yet. For example, let's say you're driving carelessly, and when you reach your destination, sometimes you ask, "Why did I come this way? When did I come?" In such moments, your subconscious has somehow taken over most of the self-control processes. This is, of course, a small example, but generally speaking, we can say that our subconscious is a physical data storage that can be accessed with various focal points, managing learned habits, daily involuntary behaviors, and more. And what about your essential character? What about the less-known unconscious? It's in a way a metaphysical version of the subconscious. If the subconscious is related to body and brain, we can say that the unconscious is symbolically related to your soul and emotions. We can include in this your unconsciously repressed impulses or traumas, meaning your deep psychological characteristics. Although it's not yet scientifically accepted, there's something I'd like to add: your spiritual qualities. So, a dream is the moment when these two concepts intertwine in an extremely interesting way, and we can literally create reality with a divine talent. You might have noticed that your dreams are sometimes very normal. You see your workplace, but there are people in your work environment whose faces you've never seen before. These are accepted as images created by our brain from moments, events, and people recorded without our knowledge in our subconscious. So, even if you think you've never seen that man or woman you saw in your dream before, you probably saw them without noticing while walking on the street. And your brain recorded that person for a while and then presented them to you in your dream. This was the simple part, because sometimes we start having dreams with much deeper meanings, especially dreams where the laws of physics become absurd and we find ourselves in almost different realities. It's exactly at this point that our unconscious, an even more mysterious force than our subconscious consciousness, comes into action. And from this moment on, we start heading toward metaphysics and extreme science. According to Carl Jung, dreams are the symbolic language of our unconscious. And this language sometimes speaks with such powerful images that it awakens a sense of reality. Jung argued that dreams carry archetypal images from the collective unconscious, implying that dreams connect us to a deep layer beyond our personal ego. This interpretation is actually quite interesting, because Jung, with this approach, clearly implies that humanity is part of a common consciousness, that our unity and connection are in a very deep place. And this idea is actually esoteric knowledge that emerged in all corners of human history, thousands of years before Jung. Throughout history, many spiritual traditions explain the reality of dreams as the soul leaving the body and having real experiences in other dimensions. For them, what we see in dreams is actually experienced on another plane. For example, in Hindu philosophy, our universe, this existence Maya, is accepted as an illusion, and it's believed that people wander in different reality layers within this dreamlike illusion. As a product of this approach, Hindus divide human consciousness into 3 layers. The first layer is Jagrat, or waking consciousness. It's the state of being aware of the physical world and daily life. The second layer is Swapna, or dream consciousness. It's the realm of dreams. During sleep, the mind experiences worlds it has created itself. The third and deepest layer is Sushupti, or deep sleep consciousness. Here, emotional awareness is completely closed, meaning it's a state of pure consciousness. Beyond all these layers, there's Turiya consciousness, which is the consciousness of a person who has reached nirvana and is now united with the divine. The common point of esoteric knowledge remains unchanged. The fact that dreams are a spiritual experience, where our consciousness experiences its own creations or wanders in higher dimensions, existences, or worlds. Although it initially sounds like a fantastic claim, when you do a little research, you come across extremely interesting information, like people who claim to have seen the future in their dreams. Have you ever experienced that part of a dream you had last night happened exactly the next day? Or did you see someone in your dream that you hadn't seen for years and receive news from that person the next day? I'm sure similar events have happened to most of you. Prophetic dreams, believed to predict the future, are quite common among people and have emerged in all periods of human history. Since ancient times, prophets and dream interpreters have tried to see the future through dreams. But is this possible, or is it the result of coincidences and games of our brain? Scientifically, there's no concrete evidence that dreams definitively predict the future. Since science for now doesn't like to dive into subjects it considers metaphysical, most scientists think this type of experience might be retrospective, meaning-making. We see many things in our dreams and forget them. Then, when a similar event happens in real life, we remember it as, "I saw the same thing in my dream." Also, you can make prophecies that happen completely by chance. Yeah, these are good explanations on paper. However, they don't fully reflect the feeling of the person who experiences them. Because the déjà vu feeling experienced by someone who clearly saw an event in their dream and then witnessed it can be unsettling, I'd like to give a few examples. From the dream Abraham Lincoln had a few days before being assassinated, where he saw a funeral ceremony at the White House. When he asked a soldier who had died, he got the answer that the president had been shot. Lincoln told this dream and was indeed killed 3 days later. Although critics say this narrative might have been made up after his death, historical records show that Lincoln was interested in dreams and told his cabinet on the morning he died that he had a strange dream. Similarly, there are narratives that some people saw the Titanic sink in their dreams before the disaster. Mark Twain also claimed to have seen his brother's death in advance in a dream. Let me even give my own painful example. One night I dreamed that my cat was walking comfortably on a very thin board over a pool full of crocodiles. When I panicked and called out to him, his attention was scattered. He fell into the pool, was caught by crocodiles, and disappeared into the darkness of the water. Of course, initially I simply ignored this as just a dream. However, months later, due to my mainly excessive caution, he went through a treatment process. And after this difficult process, his recovery was hard because he was also old. And as a result of this chain of events, he passed away in the following 6 months. Sometimes I can't help but think, was the dream I had a warning about this? Or was it all just a coincidence? Personally, I don't believe in coincidences. As I said, most of you have had such experiences. Please write your own experiences in the comments. These kinds of examples bring this question to mind. Does consciousness sometimes transcend time, perceive the future, and communicate it to us through dreams? From a scientific perspective, in some experiments conducted at Maimonides sleep laboratories, subjects were put to sleep, and a person in another room imagined sending a randomly selected image to the minds of the sleeping subjects. As a result of the experiment, it was claimed that significant results were obtained, showing that target images were telepathically perceived by individuals sleeping in the REM phase. Today, the general opinion is to approach the idea that dreams predict the future with skepticism. However, this view is likely to change, especially as quantum physics develops. In quantum physics, there's a concept known as block universe structure. According to this, what we call time isn't really a flowing process. It's a dimension, a fixed block within this four-dimensional structure. Therefore, according to this approach, there's no concept of past and future. There's only the moment we experience as present. Everything else has already happened and finished. Think that you're experiencing a part of a whole. If this approach is correct, and they'll probably prove its correctness soon, the impossibility of predicting the future will also be refuted. Let's expand the block universe a bit and combine it with quantum field theory. According to this approach, all existence is actually a whole interconnected by invisible networks that carry energy and information, and we're part of it. When I say parts, I really mean their parts. Actually, using a somewhat religious expression, we came from Him, and to Him we will return. Therefore, as part of this network, it might be possible for you to feel the effect that an object at the other end of the universe's four-dimensional structure will create in the field, or for it to affect you somehow. Because basically, we're all things that continuously exist in the same creative energy pool, then stop existing, transform into energy again, and similarly transform from energy back into matter. Now, combine this approach with the time concept in the block universe model. In this case, if past and future have already happened and finished, we as observers only perceive it as present, and we live in a reality that's constantly transforming, existing and stopping existing. And if we're all part of this, don't you think it might be possible to transfer information somehow within this pattern? That is, receiving insights from the future and somehow traveling to all layers of existence? For those who think this is theoretically possible but would require technology far beyond our current capabilities, even beyond our imagination, I'd like to say that you've had this technology since the day you were born. In the 1990s, Nobel Prize-winning physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff collaborated on a study to develop the ORCH or Orchestrated Objective Reduction theory in academia. According to this theory, they claim that microscopic structures called microtubules found in brain nerve cells function with quantum processes. This means that the concept of observation that humans interpret as consciousness can't be explained by normal physics. According to Penrose, consciousness is a phenomenon that emerges in that mysterious moment when the quantum wave function collapses. To simplify even further, consciousness is such a force that can emerge in a situation where normally everything is in quantum superposition, in a state of chaos, in an ocean of infinite possibilities. and can transform this chaos of infinite possibilities into the order we currently perceive. Therefore, according to this approach, everything you see is in a way a reality we create collectively through our brain and consciousness, and we do this without knowing it. This isn't a claim to be taken lightly, because in 2014, at Kashiwa Laboratories in Tokyo, Dr. Anirban Bandyopadhyay announced that he detected quantum vibrations at room temperature in microtubules, which are the cytoskeleton of neurons. In 2025, in a joint Oxford-MIT study investigating the consciousness-suppressing effects of anesthetic molecules, they indirectly proved that the active ingredients disrupt these quantum vibrations in microtubules, thus causing the shutdown of consciousness. So these two studies became studies that very seriously support Roger Penrose's claim from the 1990s that our brain functions like a quantum computer and creates reality through consciousness. So, if the brain has such tremendous creative power, and we'll examine how tremendous this power is in the video, how real is reality? So could the incredibly realistic images belonging to our completely different lives that we see in our dreams result from our brain actually creating these realities on this uncontrolled plane? In other words, could we be seeing parallel universes in our dreams? The probable answer to this question is yes. In the late 1950s, young quantum physicist Hugh Everett put forward a claim that shook the scientific world. The idea that the universe might not be a single universe but infinite in number. Today, this approach is known as parallel universe and multiverse theory. At the base of the theory lie the wave function and splitting. Those who watched my double-slit experiment video know that electrons behave like matter when there's an observer effect and like waves when there's no observer. Those who haven't watched it should definitely watch it. This is one of the most incredible experiments in the history of science. In quantum physics, if there's no observer, there's a reality, meaning in a situation unobserved by consciousness, everything remains in waiting as an infinite number of possibilities. In other words, in the universe, every moment, there's potential for every possible scenario to realize. However, the moment an observer, meaning consciousness, comes into action, this uncertainty ends, and it seems as if only one scenario, a single reality, is experienced. But according to Hugh Everett's many worlds interpretation, the story doesn't end here. Every decision you make now, every path you choose, creates this reality you find yourself in. However, the other paths you didn't choose, the other possibilities don't disappear. Even without you being aware, they might also be realizing in other parallel universes. Let's say today you chose the highway to go home. According to Everett, at that moment, the scenarios where you didn't choose the highway, diverted to side roads, or even never went out at all, are also becoming real in other universes. In short, don't think I just made one choice. I didn't make the others. Every choice can cause the universe to branch, and every possibility to continue being experienced somewhere. This is where this subject connects to dreams. If our brain, functioning like a free quantum computer during sleep, can somehow escape the fundamental rules embedded in our existence, the structure we perceive as reality, and if it can liberate itself during sleep, could we be unconsciously experiencing these parallel realities we create during sleep? In other words, is the version of you that speaks Spanish fluently in your dream really you who was born in Spain or took a Spanish course in that parallel universe? Sometimes you have dreams that feel extremely real. Even your spouse is different. Your house, your car are different. Are all these the realities created by decisions we didn't make, as Everett said? I'm going even one step further. Do we unconsciously reach the astral plane that mystics describe as the dimension of pure energy and creation in our sleep? Does our consciousness, using its power as an observer there, create a reality in every dream? When we wake up, the existence we created disappears because our consciousness returns to this, our existence. In short, do we become a kind of God of the reality we create in our dreams? So, who or what is dreaming the reality we're in now? Or are we also a dream, seen and created by a power? The subject of dreams and consciousness isn't something that can be explained in a single video. That's why I divided this mini-series into 3 parts, and in the coming weeks we'll add various pieces to our puzzle in order. This is, of course, a subject impossible to understand just through videos. Even now, The world's brightest minds dedicate their lives to understanding these subjects, and I'm just compiling these wonderful works and presenting them to you somehow. However, these subjects are so related to the essence of our existence that the enlightenment of a quantum physicist who dedicates his life to this might equal the enlightenment of a farmer who plants strawberries in the soil. That's why please don't say this is something I can't understand. This is the peak where science, metaphysics, and philosophy intertwine. And since everyone's opinion, everyone's perception of reality is unique, we can all support this work directly or indirectly. Personally, while I usually see dreams as a reflection of our subconscious in those special moments, those serene moments, I also see them as a reflection beyond time and dimensions. And especially with advanced meditation techniques, as I mentioned in this video, I believe we can better grasp these extreme metaphysical boundaries. Is the brain a quantum computer? Is reality infinite? I'm sure all these are mysteries that will be solved one day. But until then, let's pay more attention to our own mysterious world, the realm of dreams. Every morning, write down the dreams you had before forgetting them. Try to notice when you're dreaming. Rest your mind with meditation. Sync your brain with the special sound waves presented in Robert Monroe's works. And who knows, maybe after all these practices, the phenomenon you dismissed as a dream can become a secret door of your consciousness, your soul, opening to the solution of the greatest secrets. Thanks for accompanying me throughout the video. As I said, 2 more videos on these topics await us, and our journey will gradually deepen. If you want to join me in these videos too, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the videos if you enjoyed them, and share them with your circles. Until we meet next week, sweet dreams to all of you.